So grounding, I would say, is the name of the game right now. So new moons were always symbolisms of beginnings. But with an eclipse, it would be a fated event. So it would like set into motion things that are almost like beyond your control.
In this trine in the air sign, and I feel like you were saying it's kind of like this giant tornado of wind coming in and just wiping, okay, you don't need this, and it's kind of wiping people clear. And so now it's a time where like be authentic, clear your body, purify your body, so that the thoughts that you're having are going to be as authentic as you can, so that we can get past this like repression that's been building up for the last couple of months and weeks.
It's lunacy. Lunacy is logic.
With Lilith and Dr. Charlier.
So welcome back, Cosmic Family, to another episode of Lunacy and
Logic!
With your host, Dr. Charlier, and your co-host, Lilith. So Lilith, what are we talking about today?
So what I want to discuss today, so we're still working with the throat chakra as a portal of power. Really what we're going to talk about today is speaking the truth, how self-worth manifests into our lives as fear. And I also want to touch on the eclipse that's coming up and the eclipse that's just been, but really in general, what is the meaning of eclipses and how the meaning of eclipses have changed from ancient times to today.
Yeah, but very potent right now, because eclipses are always very potent energies to talk about.
Exactly. We're filming the slab bang in the middle of eclipse season, literally.
Exactly. Yes. Awesome.
Well, it's slab bang in the middle of eclipse season, and the eclipse was basically conjunct your sun, and north node or south node is about to conjunct your sun.
Yep, a lot going on. So we're excited to be sharing this today. So let's get right into it. Let's go into our pulses today. Let's see. When I'm seeing the collective pulses, I'm still getting that deep pulse and a little bit of wiriness with some, I think, knotted or intermittent. Like it just doesn't know what rhythm it wants to be in. Funny pulse, but really deep one to talk about. How about your end?
Yeah, it's funny that you say this like intermittent because I got very rapid. My pulse, or I got very rapid. So the pulse for me was more rapid than usual, almost like stumbling over its feet. So it's almost like your pulse is a follow-up of mine.
Yeah.
That is the perfect collective pulse, because you've got North Node, South Node, Pisces, Virgo coming at you.
Yeah, and these eclipses is also kind of getting us to really go deep, dig deep into kind of releasing a lot of things that we're ready to let go. And with the Virgo Pisces, it's not a superficial letting go. It is definitely spiritual and deep rooted in our core. So that's why you see this deep pulse, kind of like, let's kind of like go deeper into the problems that we need to face. And I feel like this intermittent is kind of like, we don't know whether we're going fast or we're slowing down or we're going, moving forward or like really dealing with our past. I feel like they're both happening at the same time. So that I feel like there's a lot of confusion, which again feels a little bit like a confused pulse.
No, it is crazy that you're saying that. I mean, every week the pulse is crazy between you and me, but once again, it's crazy. And the reason why is because I actually also felt a I mean, you're trying to articulate really something that feels contradictory. It's like going in opposite directions. And I also had a contradictory pulse today, which is mind blowing. So the pulse, along with the rapid and forceful, was actually hollowness. So this is like, rapid and forceful implies the vessels are full too much, but hollowness and a lot of air energy implies empty vessels. And so I was getting this rapid, forceful pulse, but hollowness with these empty vessels, which I felt basically was like this void of silence.
Yeah, yeah. And you can see kind of these pulses are very similar if you understand the basics of what we call yin yang transforming into each other. And so when we talk about this deep pulse, you're almost kind of talking about kind of low energy. And as this low energy kind of depletes, what happens is we call it a floating pulse because almost like what's supposed to anchor the energy to our deep pulse is actually floating away from us and creating this hollow floating pulse that you're talking about. So I feel like our pulses are like two sides to the same coin, as like certain people are really feeling this deep, like go deeper into your problems, but some who are not dealing with a deep pulse are feeling this hollow, empty kind of floating pulse that you're experiencing as well.
Well, I think, I mean, as I said, I think our pulses are very much interlinked in the sense that the hollowness I really feel like has come now after this Pisces lunar eclipse. Do you know what I'm saying? Where the water was kind of like drained and left people feeling like spiritually dried out. Which is, I mean, we're pretty much, we've got different pulses and we've ended up with the same like same diagnosis almost, or the same
Yeah,
interpretation. This is what I'm
yeah,
absolutely loving. I mean, nailed it, Charlie. But anyway, so the point is, and this, so the spiritually dried out, because the point is, it's now the after effects of this Pisces eclipse, of that having been silenced. The collective is also got, so the rapid and the forceful, that fire energy is coming from the suppressed heat and suppressed anger of having been silenced. And so, you know, that the air, all the air energy is now filling that silence with truth. This is what essentially has to happen.
yeah, yeah. No, I do feel, and that's kind of where it goes back to this rapid pulse, where it's almost there's this impatience to like say things, but this is where we have to be very careful because in like that suppression, we might just be saying anything and everything, and that could distract from the deeper meaning that we're really trying to talk about, right? As we're really saying, what is it that we're actually upset about, rather than just whining, right? And I think this is where we have to be careful that we're not just blowing up, but we were very intentional on how we're expressing how we're feeling and what actually, because like you said, the Pisces energy kind of left us, that water energy, and so suddenly we are being filled with this vacuum of air of like, where is the emotional spirit that needs to kind of come up? And what you're getting now is a lot more of fluff, and we have to make sure that we be careful about misinformation too, right? Because I think right now there's just so much info out there now that we could feel inundated with just things that are hollow, like you, like our pulse.
Well, you know, the air can also mean clearing space for what's to come. So it's almost like this is the collective breath before the plunge.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's
And I
why I
do
feel like
think,
your pulse is almost like a progression of mine.
yeah,
Charlie
yeah,
is one step ahead of the game.
yes, because if you've done your work, you know what's coming. Because I do think these eclipses are very important, as it's really actually opening us up to new information and just new changes in our lives. So I, like you were saying, the space that's happening right now is to make space for the next phase in our evolutionary, I think, collective evolution. I mean, these nodes are these eclipses are very important for the collective to really go through a shift of the ages, where we are bringing more spirituality into our lives. And so I think again, like this is really interesting time where there's a lot to let go as we're preparing for some new things, which still looking and waiting for.
Well, I think with all this Virgo energy that we've got going on, definitely, you know, grounding is going to be one of the answers, because we had
Yeah,
the new moon in Virgo, then we had the full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces opposing Virgo, and then we've got obviously the new moon solar eclipse at the 29 Virgo. So it's just like Virgo all the way through. So grounding, I would say, is the name of the game right now.
yeah, yes. And you should ask the Virgo who just had a solar return on how to ground during that crazy time. So we'll go into all this as we kind of go into the codes of destiny next. So yeah, we just got into the lunar eclipse, full moon lunar eclipse, September 7th, which is a day after my birthday, y'all. So it was very kind of beautiful. Where the day of my birthday, I was kind of really feeling, because also with my solar return, I did my solar return chart, and so the theme of this year for me, because usually solar return is also um, what are the coded destinies of the day of my birthday. And so there's a lot of air signs. There's a lot of energy with the eclipses. And so I feel like right now I'm moving into a space of like being grounded, as like the world is like going into a whirlwind of information. I feel like this lunar eclipse, I felt like basically my guides were like, Charlie, you have to go, you just have to finish the work. Like, this is, even today, September 999, like, it's a lot of final clearing. I'm actually 45, which is a 9 in numerology. My father passed at 88 while I was 44 when he passed. So I was halfway
That
in his
is
life.
crazy.
Right. And so now I'm like going into 45, going like, my guys are like, Charlie, it's time for you to stop playing around. You were playing and it was fine for the first 40 years, but now what are you putting into the collective that is, your spiritual mission, your guidance, and how are you showing up as a spirit? And that's why I realized that, like, I think I've run into, as we're all having this, what we call spiritual awakening, a lot of us are losing friends, or kind of like we're kind of removing ourselves, distancing ourselves from old groups of people that we used to hang out with. And what's happening is new groups of people are happening and showing up. And so I really felt that I didn't want to celebrate at home. I actually left home. It wasn't home, but I actually went to a different event. They were celebrating an event, but that's where my whole group was there. I had all my friends there, and I was like, yeah, this is how I'm going into my new year. This is how I'm going to my spirit work. This is no longer I'm alone doing spirit work. I'm here with my crew. And so I really felt like I'm going to go deeper into my own medicine of like qigong, tai chi, astrology, like.
I've also been doing Tai Chi again lately. That's crazy
Yeah.
that you say that.
Yeah,
Pisces Virgo axis, bro. We on the
yeah, it's
same
the
axis.
metaphysical is normalized in our life. I feel like before we were kind of like, I'm metaphysical like some of the time, but I don't want to tell everybody I'm metaphysical. And God's like, no, Charlie. It's metaphysical or nothing, like you only have metaphysical, because people tend to be comforted into the non-metaphysical and say, oh no, I don't want to think about that. I want to just think about what I can see. And it's like, no, we got to test people, we got to push people's boundaries, and we are the axis of Virgo and Pisces. And so during this crazy Virgo, like energy, like the guys are like, Charlie, ground so you can do deeper spiritual practices. And I've been dealing with certain patients. I've been having a lot of Reiki patients. I've been helping clear energy, and they all come in like, Charlie, I don't know what's going on, but I just need to clear my energy. Can you clear my energy? So I've been doing a lot of resetting for people, but this is where like I have never done this much Reiki in my life. And so I do feel like the guys are like, you're going to keep getting patient. So you're going to either get better at your spiritual practices, to do your mission work, or it's going to take you out, because when we are doing our spiritual practices, we're actually protecting ourselves to make sure that we're not picking up people's, darker energies. And so I'm doing a lot of clearing, I'm doing a lot of cutting cords, but like the guys, like, if you're not doing that, you're not going to be able to do your healing. So, I feel like suddenly I'm no longer kind of like doing what we call the mundane anymore. I don't go do things that are very superficial. I have to like really see if spirit's calling me there. If I feel a spiritual connection, I go. If I don't go. And that's been very difficult for me, because sometimes I'm like in Houston, I just want to have fun. And sometimes like, yeah, let's go have fun. And then the guys are like, is there a spiritual mission? I'm like, let me see. Okay, maybe not. There isn't. And then they're like, well, you shouldn't be there. And that's been very difficult for me, because, as Leo rising, you kind of want to just go with the flow and have fun. And then the guys are like, Charlie, it's time. Like, you're 45. It's like, this is it. The metaphysical is no longer something we can put aside. It is kind of my life. And so, these eclipse in Pisces, and I really feel it a lot. A lot of spiritual friends have shown up now, and they're like, "Here we are." So I really don't want to have friendships that are just talking about. So how's that sports team, Charlie? I don't care. I want to ask, what's the spiritual collective issues of our planet? That's the conversation I'm having. So if we're not having these conversations, please swipe left on me. That's what I feel like.
You're
I'm
preaching to the
assessing.
converted over here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's been tough because, being in Houston and, kind of like wanting to be exploring Houston in a more like, where the good food places, where the good fun hangout places. They're like, no, Charlie, where are the spiritual places? And that's tough, but I do feel like I'm ready for that like next step.
Yeah, I mean, so it sounds like it was a big eclipse for you.
Yeah, South Node, right?
It was conjunct my sun as well, since it was.
Yeah. And your moon too. I know your moon's in there, moon in Virgo,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Opposing my moon. Well, my moon is actually not really conjunct your sun, I guess. It's close. It's like 9 degrees or maybe 10. Yeah, I can't remember now what your degrees exactly. 13.
I'm at 5, 13 degrees sun, 5 degrees moon.
Yeah, yeah, 13 degrees sun is what I'm talking about. Yeah. The eclipse for me was really very internal in the sense that I had stuff happening externally that would previously trigger me, but ain't nobody got time for that. So I wasn't even like, it didn't even trigger me. I saw it and I was like, yo, I don't even care anymore. Like, you can do whatever you must. This is like a surrender, what must be, must be. But what I did find was some clarity was revealed to me, even though it was uncomfortable. What is my next steps that I have to take, but some clarity with regards to the next steps that I have to take on my journey. So that was, I think, the biggest thing for me was that truth reveal, which, it wasn't heavy, but it was uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. Well, also Saturn's kind of retrograding back, doing that moonwalk back into Pisces. So,
Well, because there it's only 4 degrees. It's within a 4 degree orb of opposing my moon. So that is still an active opposition in my life
yeah,
right there.
yeah. Yeah. So I do think this retrograde season coming up too is also going to add to the eclipse as we're preparing for really major shifts in the collective. But we are so seeing all the different planetary alignments, kind of like doing a quick retrograde before like the heavy fall season, where I feel like we're gonna let go so much because this. We're going to talk about this too, but we're getting this crazy trine, right? Pluto in Aquarius, Uranus in Gemini, and then soon the sun will hit Libra. Mars is already in Libra, so we're getting this trine in the air sign. And I feel like you were saying, it's kind of like this giant tornado of wind coming in and just wiping, okay, you don't need this, you don't need this, and it's kind of wiping people clear of kind of these old karmic energies. And so, yeah, it's been really interesting to see people coming in and also reflecting what the astrology is going through right now.
So with this new moon, solar eclipse happening at 29 degrees Virgo on the 21st of September,
Mm,
at the same time. So first of all, first Saturn opposes the sun at 28 degrees. Right after that, the sun moves to 29 degrees, and that's where the solar eclipse happens. Now, at the same time of the solar eclipse, there are two yods. Okay, one yod is pointing towards Venus in Virgo, and that's pointing from Pluto in Aquarius and the Saturn and Neptune conjunction. So that's the
mm-hmm,
yod pointing to Venus. Now, a yod
mm-hmm,
alignment, remember, is it's God's finger. So what it's pointing to is the issue at hand, and where it's pointing from or what's going to help you. Okay, so this is pointing to Venus in Virgo, from Pluto in Aquarius and the Saturn Neptune conjunction, and then another yod pointing to Mars in Libra.
mm-hmm.
coming from Uranus in Gemini and the Saturn and Pluto conjunction.
Oh.
So one God's finger is pointing to Venus and one to Mars. And do you know where is, I'll take a wild guess, where is the solar eclipse happening?
In Virgo.
Right in between, yes, right between the Venus and Mars.
Oh, interesting. Okay, okay, okay.
So basically, they're saying that this is like, it's a green flag moment. So basically, you've got, it's an eclipse where there's some, you've got like temporary special powers where you can make anything happen, like anything goes. The only key, there is a caveat. There is always a caveat with God. The caveat is that it has to be authentic to you. Otherwise, it's not going to work. But as long as it's authentic,
Yeah.
anything goes. So for me, I'm saying you've got to innovate and change your perspective, your way of thinking, in order to make Mars, your dreams, Neptune, become reality, Saturn. And what is the yacht pointing to? It's pointing to Mars. It's like
Mars.
you got to make it happen.
Right.
So there's going to require some action, but the time is now.
So you're seeing one yod, we're pointing to Venus, and so Venus is also about magnetizing, but with purity. So you're talking about, like you're saying, like clear of mind, purity of soul, authenticity. And then when Mars comes in, Mars like justice, equality, and like being fair of who you are and like flowing into it. And so because of that, like you have to pay attention to like clearing who you are in purity of Virgo, so that Mars can now take action of free from like the negative side effects, right? And that's why we're saying being authentic. Otherwise, that Mars in Libra is going to sound like everybody else but themselves. Yeah, yeah. It's a very exciting placement going on this month, September. And again, I feel like this is also kind of waking up the personal power of people, right? Because Mars and Venus are both personal powers. So it's almost like giving back the personal power to the authentic spirit within the personal, right? The personal user. And as a personal user is waking up, we are going to be facing a collective like reset and a collective like calling out the shit that's not working, right? Because really what's happening is we haven't been authentic, like you said. We've been repressed, and so now it's a time where like be authentic, clear your body, purify your body, so that the thoughts that you're having are going to be as authentic as you can, so that we can get past this like repression that's been building up for the last couple of months and weeks.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
so now on to this grand trine happening on the 24th of September, which is between the Sun, Uranus, and Pluto. This trine is essentially all the, I mean, the Mars energy is also in air, but this is actually the trine where I feel that's bringing in a lot of the air energy. This Sun, Uranus, Pluto.
Mm-hmm.
This is essentially like an activation of the collective mind, like a
Yeah.
turning point in how our networks, how we think, how we organize ourselves.
Yeah, I feel like this is also where even the idea of the news, even podcasting like us, right? I feel like this is the new format of the new air element that is getting formed, right? Because, we've been doing podcasts and people have been doing podcasts for a while, but podcasting was not as popular until what we've seen recently, where people are now leaving mainstream media, leaving kind of the typical, what I call top down mechanism of control, where like the top tells the bottom how to live their life. And then now with the podcasting scenario, people like us, everyday people, are sharing their wisdom. And that's really flipping the model of the top giving the information down to the bottom one are the ones who understand the information, because they're the ones living in the world, experiencing things. And so when we talk about even giving the news to people, it's not the news of this person on TV that you don't know telling you how the world is, to people on the ground recording on their video, this is what I see, this is what I'm seeing. And that's gathering information very quickly for us to gather what's the news, what's happening right now in our world, rather than getting a very um like like um scripted version of our story, and that's how it's being repressed, because these scripts are not telling the story of what everyone is experiencing. And I feel like the phones and how people are vlogging or TikTok or social media is like this new way of the air quality, saying, hey, I want to hear the authentic experiences people are having so that we can kind of get an idea of what's happening, rather than what I call the filtered, tailored news of the old telling us how to feel about things. And I do think it's also going to change relationship globally. I think, as we're talking about these air quality, where the earth, where we had more of an earth before, in this more air quality, I think the idea of boundaries are changing. The idea of us traveling between countries is going to be much more fluid and much more moving, because you cannot
Well,
stop
and
the wind.
even traveling between realms.
Exactly. I do think there's a lot more traveling between realms for sure. I have noticed a lot of people, when I do a lot more sound bath, a lot of people are jumping out of their bodies and going into different dimensions. That is definitely much more potent right now in our sound baths. So I've definitely seen a lot of people leaving their bodies a lot more with this air coming in. So this trine is probably going to be even more intense.
Well, it's like a massive air wave of transformation. That's Sun, Uranus, and Pluto right there.
Yes, yes, exactly. And Uranus is going to come hard. Uranus and Gemini, because we've been seeing a little bit of this Jupiter and Gemini for a while, but when Uranus comes in, it's a whole new level of like changes. Where Jupiter was just overdoing everything, I think Uranus is like, this needs to go, this needs to go. Welcome to the new world. And it's gonna be so spontaneous. Like, I'm really excited because I do enjoy like almost like a movie you're watching. You like don't know what's gonna happen. I feel like Uranus is like, oh guys, here we go.
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the eclipses, actually, in this whole roll of things. So the point is, if you think about what they, like in ancient times, what eclipses meant, like in ancient Babylonian or Greek or even Vedic um, schools of thought, they were seen as omens.
Hmm.
In ancient Gnostic and Hermetic texts, they would see eclipses as um, like a veil tearing. So, in other words, like the ability of the soul to contact other realms, but also at the risk of delusion or insanity or some kind of sacrifice. So if I look past at the past meanings that they have of eclipses, I see it, they're focusing a lot more on the yin polarity. And as our consciousness has evolved, I mean, whereas Pisces in the past was very much around the dissolution of ego and all of those kinds of things, now we see it a lot as the sign of unity consciousness, dreams, spirituality. Do you know what I'm saying? Even
Yeah,
the karma clearing, whereas in the past they would like spin the negative, now we're saying that, oh, well, that negative is necessary for karma clearing to open up the spiritual path.
right, right.
So it's almost like we've taken the meanings from the ancients and extended it as our consciousness evolution has evolved. But at all times, eclipses, I mean, this new moon eclipse coming up in Virgo, it's a new moon. So new moons were always symbolisms of beginnings. But with an eclipse, it would be a fated event. So it would like set into motion things that are almost like beyond your control.
Yes, and this is kind of what I think was really interesting about the ancients, right? Like I think that they weren't able to kind of see what was coming up. They were only able to know for sure what was ending, and so that was kind of their main focus. But also, like in the age of Pisces, I feel like there was a lot of this like negative spin to things because of the watery element of the last 2000 years. But as we're moving to the age of Aquarius, things are lightening up, and I feel like we're starting to see more of the positive effects because we've been so tired of the negative effects of life in general. I think we've been really kind of suppressed in the last thousands of years and 2,000 years, that I feel like there's almost like a hope now that we're looking more in the positive aspects of an eclipse rather than just the negative. And I think that's why it's exciting for us to rebrand eclipses, because they are this, everything that has an ending has a death and a rebirth, right? It's very much transient in my eighth house right now. And so it's very important that we always see both sides and not one side of the story. And I think this is why it's important for us to even talk about like um, taking action and being more positive after the eclipse, but allowing the eclipse, like in the moment of the eclipse, to kind of like be in reverence that like we're in a very big portal transition, because we know what is ending, we don't know what is beginning. And I think that's why it's easier to kind of focus on things that are ending, but you never know what's going to start, because you won't know until post eclipse, right? So that's why in hindsight you can always say, well, this was the beginning of this generation. But in the eclipse that happened, in the moment of it, all we know is what we really want to end. Right? I want to end taxes. I want to end everything that is suppressing society. So like I think corporations need to be restructured. I think banks need to be restructured, financial systems all need to be restructured, and that's very important.
Yeah, so what I want to say, so you were talking about both sides, and that's exactly it. Because whereas, for instance, the past, it was seen as, Pisces was like seen as the dissolution of ego. Now we know, oh, the ego must dissolve, but because it needs to surrender. So there's more like, it's more mystical in the sense that you need to trust in the unseen currents of life. You know what
Exactly.
I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
more, it's more like trusting in what's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the age of Pisces is almost like we were looking for reasons, right? Reasoning and understanding and evidence. And now we're like, no, the evidence, no, like none of it matters, because actually flowing into what's happening is the evidence that spirit is very much alive, right? Versus if you're always trying to like prove things, I feel like you're actually missing the flow of spirit. And that's why I think science is always behind, like 100 miles behind spirit, because it's always looking for the evidence that it exists, but not is able to surrender to see that spirit is flowing into everything.
No, exactly. That's beautifully said.
All right, so let's go into keeping it real, y'all.
Keeping it real.
Cool. So what's been going on with you, Lilith?
Well, I mean, this is what we were talking about with all this air energy. The real concept is the fact that we've been silenced and this truth telling that's required. And so it's becoming more and more critical. Like if you think about where you haven't been truthful, where you withheld a truth somewhere in your life with your family or your business or whatever, and what's that ended up costing. And what I've discovered also is that part of that part of that silence, what is initiating that silence, is actually fear. And that fear is actually stemming from self-worth issues. I've got Chiron in the first house in Taurus. This is basically the epitome of a wounded self-worth. But that's the point. What I've discovered, because I was always fighting with God. I'm like, yo, bro, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't have any self-worth issues. And this has been an ongoing fight for a long time. And what he showed me, like during this eclipse, basically, was certain actions that I was doing that I was doing as a result of fear, and that fear was stemming from self-worth. So he was able to show me the pathway clearly. And what it looked like essentially was like, you know, fearing that you fear of saying the wrong thing, like in this cancel culture, or fear of being laughed at for what you say. Chiron in Taurus in the first house, fear of looking ridiculous. So when you say it, I mean, there's no end to the humiliation and some kind of more like a feeling of inadequacy, you know? And so that kind of identification was pretty critical in starting to heal the self-worth. When you see, actually, I thought I had no self-worth issues, but when God points out my behavior, that self-worth issue is actually pervasive in my life. You know what I'm
Wow.
saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So this is once again that, focusing on the throat chakra and the being silenced. Sometimes you just silenced because you don't feel like your contribution is worthy of being heard. It's inadequate. Maybe you feel like, you don't have the life experience or whatever to make a contribution. These are all actually stem from self-worth issues.
Interesting. Yeah, yeah. I definitely see that. I think self worth is such an important conversation. I mean, I definitely understand that just because I have a stellium in my first house. So with Virgo, so there's definitely a lot of doubt in my life about whether
Of
I'm
course you
good
do,
enough.
Charlie. Of course you do.
Yeah, and Virgo loves to be like, I need to be perfect, otherwise, I'm not good enough. But also as a healer, actually, what you're talking about is what I think we, as like what we call alternative indigenous healers, have been made fun of for what we believed, right? Of our medicine, of our genetic and heredity heritage of our medicine. Even today now, I experience, being as healer, but like people are like, what kind of healer? I'm like, I have like 4 or 5 modalities under my belt, right? So people are like, wow, it could sound very distracted. I'm like, sure. But when we're having a holistic conversation, you want someone who has multiple modalities under the belt because then they're much more holistic than someone who is a specialist at anything. And so I think for me, it's been very difficult in like finding like how to explain my professional healing experiences when like um there's so many ways I can talk about the healing modalities that I know. And so that's been very hard for me to kind of have, self-worth in one modality when like there's a little bit in every modality, right? But really actually when I look at how the person has different problems, different transits, right? Depending on where if they're physical ailments, mental ailments, or spiritual ailments, those tend to shift for people. And so for me, when I started to learn that people were literally everybody are going through these transits, I started to trust more in my own transits as much as I'm understanding what people are differently going through, right? And when that happened, I was able to more align to the patterns of spirit rather than saying Charlie is saying this, Charlie is doing that. I think in when we're talking about this, in surrendering to the spiritual guidance that I'm feeling all the time, I'm finally kind of able to find almost like value and self-confidence in surrendering to spirit, which is again paradoxically because a lot of people go, where's your evidence, Charlie? Spirit. I mean, like, I don't know how to like tell you that like spirit have left me these breadcrumbs to follow, and now I am where I am today because I feel like so many of our indigenous cultures, right? Even when we talk about traditional Eastern medicine, right? While we're studying, this medicine has been censored, like you're saying, and it's been kind of kept from people being able to access this. This medicine is what I grew up when I first came to America. My parents were using a cupping on me, using gua sha on me before they're like, okay, I guess we're going to go to the doctor because all the Americans are going to doctors, right? And so my value in medicine. Like people want to cancel traditional Chinese medicine, say pseudoscience, yet they're using needles in dry needling in and right now fascia has been like, oh, we just discovered fascia. Yet like I'm sure our traditional medicines have been using fascia for so long. So I feel like right now the self-worth is almost been so manufactured against us that
Well,
we
that will be needing superficial to the muscle.
exactly, exactly. Versus when we're doing like the actual acupuncture, we're going deeper into the organs, into the emotions of the
No,
body.
but I'm saying we also needle superficially depending on the situation.
Right,
Because
exactly,
you were
exactly.
saying You were saying about the fascia. The
Right.
fascia is superficial to the muscle. We've been needling the fascia for
Forever.
thousands of years already.
Exactly. And people don't realize,
Yeah.
but we've been needling fascia because we've been managing farmers. We've been managing the people who work on the farm, who do the daily labor. It wasn't the rich that did acupuncture because the rich were not getting tired and sick and, exhausted. It was the people who were working on the fields, people who were working all day long on the streets, working, trying to make wages, right? And so it's really funny that ironically now people spend money on Chinese medicine, and it's usually people who have money because those who don't have money, they actually rely on something like Medicare, Medicaid, or insurance to get their healthcare benefits, right? And so that's been very difficult for me to see that, like, actually, my medicine, the medicine that we have been bringing to the population, has been kind of this repressed so that the normal everyday person isn't getting this medicine. And so I've been kind of, because of this, really pushing this idea that no, we have to actually get in front of the camera and tell people that we did not disappear. Those who are the shamans, the indigenous healers, we didn't disappear. We've been here in hiding because a lot of people canceled us when Western medicine became popular. Yet now, what's really interesting is we're seeing the shift now of modern medicine is actually having resurgence to go back to what I call wellness practices, where a lot of the female audience left hospitals, went into the spa wellness spaces, and actually developed healing in those spaces because they weren't doing preventative medicine. So I think now wellness left Western medicine, and you see Western medicine now not having enough of the female audience and the female demographic to support this medicine. I don't think the Western medicine is necessarily going to keep developing. And this is why I feel like self-worth is so important to just who we are culturally, right? Like, I was made fun of for being Asian. So I went against my Asian heritage and my Asian medicine. So I had self-worth issue because I was getting sick from Western stuff, and I didn't have a connection to my own genetic, my own heritage, which was connecting then even to my spirit guides and my ancestors. And so that caused so much of my own self-worth issues because all of my intuitions that was matching up to medicines were not matching up to what everyone was saying was considered modern medicine, right? So that's this kind of like this deeper conversation. Like, I think a lot of our self-worth issues are kind of like the society gaslighting us into disregarding our heritage, our eugenics, right? Our genetic information, and telling us just follow the science way of healing. So I think that's kind of where my self-worth issue and the heal, because as a Virgo, I'm naturally a healer. So until I understood medicine in that Virgo space, I literally lived with a lot of, no value. I didn't feel like I had any value as a doctor. And now I'm starting to realize, like, no, actually, we are where we are today because of our ancestors and like how they've developed things over time. So, for me, self-value is very much connected to the medicine, but also like connected to spirit. Like, in that connecting to spirit, we connect to intuition, and that's where I feel like a lot of us are being asked to speak from that space now, that authentic space, rather than what you learned in indoctrination school.
I wouldn't call Western medicine. I mean, you said wellness is like moving away from Western medicine or leaving Western medicine. I say that sounds about right because I wouldn't associate Western medicine with wellness at all. Mostly because if you need Western medicine, you ain't well. So,
And you may not get well.
but back to the self-worth, the medicine for the self-worth, I realized, is forgiving yourself, like basically letting yourself off the hook. I mean, if you have ever forgiven anybody for anything, then you can forgive yourself, because if anybody is worthy of your forgiveness, it's you yourself.
I was just wondering if this is kind of how, spirit was guiding you to even in what practice to help you get through yourself, like forgiveness, right? Was that kind of also part of the message that you were getting, to help yourself forgive yourself, to heal this part of you?
Well, actually, what he was kind of showing me is because I mean, we like to think of ourselves as light workers, and here we're doing shadow work, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on, yo? Am I a shadow worker or am I a light worker or what's happening here? And he showed me, but shadow work is light work. You can't actually do the shadow work. You can't do light work without doing the shadow work. So that was pretty amazing. So the process of how to forgive yourself is really doing that shadow work.
Yeah.
And so the light work comes out. So the shadow work is the forgiving yourself to heal the self-worth, and then the light work you can perform once you've got a healed self-worth.
Yes, yes. It reminds me of a beautiful quote by Lao Tzu in the Tao Te Ching, that when you want to learn anything, you add something. When you want to become enlightened, you remove something. And so what you're just describing is, I feel like, um, light light workers are adding something. You're adding light to your experiences, so you're learning. However, to be enlightened is to do the removing, the shadow work, because shadow work is removing things that you don't need anymore. So, like for you, it was self worth, right? And so, because you were not having self worth, you were having shadows. So you had to remove and forgive yourself from things that happened to you. And when you remove those, you become enlightened, right? You become lighter in energy. And in removing that, you do the enlightenment so that you can add more light, as you were saying.
Yeah, and so what and for me the thing that you would do after that, once you are got a healed self-worth and you're able to progress and start the light work, where would I start with the light work? Because make no mistake, the light work may be seen as the fun part, but it's just as significant, right? So once you've healed the self-worth, you have to now start realizing how to use the Uranus and Gemini energy. And I think that would involve starting with what success means to you. After you've forgiven yourself for all the failures, you know what I'm saying? Or for all your own failures, you can now start thinking, okay, forget about what society's success is. What is important to you and what is success to you? Like, is it money? Is it being able to live the life of your dreams? Is it having a job where you have to work 24 hours a day? Is it having people that love you? What is um, your form of success? And so redefining success to you, do you know what I'm saying? And living out that life. That for me is the light work.
Mm.
That's the fun stuff. Particularly, it's only going to be fun if it's coming from a healed self worth, if the shadow work has been done.
Yeah. I mean, the light work is basically, yeah, just adding the fun stuff when you remove all the baggage. I'd say it's also, you add the
Yeah.
light when you've plugged all the holes that is trying to gather light. Because a lot of times we're gathering light, but
Well,
we're
where the light can escape from.
exactly.
You don't want the light to escape and leave you back in the dark.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's where we have to, and I use a lot of this hole in your auric field analogy, because as spirit, when we say divine energy is light that comes through the crown chakra and is really trying to embody the body. But what happened is, when you have holes in your chakra system, your auric field becomes uh, filled with holes, and so it's not very potent. And so what happened is, the light that you carry actually dims, because your auric field is dim because it has holes, because it leaks out energy. That's what we call in shadow work. So when we're doing shadow work, you're facing the leaks of your field that is causing your a chakra system to be very closed or turned off. And when that gets turned off, that reduces the energy of your shields or auric field to protect you from negative thoughts or kind of anything that comes in. And so that's why it's very important for us to like do. That's why like chakras is not like a small thing. Chakra is a very fundamental part in who we are, how we actually gather energy. In Qigong Tai Chi, it's really this development of this chakra system that allows you to send energy like light out of your body. So it is in that development of your chakra system to release the shadows that hang out in your chakras so that your body can house more light inside your vessel. And when there is more light inside of your body and you're not leaking, what happens is your DNA starts to unfurl, and actually, like this coiling serpent, the DNA unfoils, and then you're starting to access uh, spiritual gifts. And this is kind of what I've been working with people as we're doing pranic healing and clearing energy and clearing their fields. People are getting more clear. People are able to be much more in their zone of genius. And that's when their light is almost radiating out, because I removed kind of the shadows that are like hanging out in their chakra system. And so this kind of like is both a metaphor, but it's also very physical, right? We even talk about food and detoxing from food, right? You know, having every so often we're detoxing, fasting, eating certain food that detoxes our body so that we release toxins, shadows, so that our body can become lighter, right?
Well, Charlie, now that you say that, I've got I haven't spoken about my kundalini in the sixth and seventh chakra lately, but now that you said that, I've got a very exciting development
Yeah.
actually. So it seems like it is very close to the seventh chakra right now, because two things specifically have happened. The one thing that has happened is that it has come to my attention that the kundalini energy now needs to go back downwards. And in going back downwards, it's the grounding. That's the grounding and the rooting. So it when the kundalini wakes, it's got to travel up to the crown, but once it reaches the crown, you've got to ground it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first thing that I noticed. So I'm busy now with that process, which for me means it's either at the seventh chakra or it's about to reach there or whatever. And the other thing that is super exciting is I've been introduced. When I say introduced, I knew about it before, but nobody gives a shit before because it wasn't relevant. It wasn't necessary. But I was now introduced to my eighth chakra. I have to start working with my eighth chakra. We've actually, as humans, we've got, is it not 15 chakras?
Yeah, but mostly 12 on, 15 is higher. And as we're evolving to a new earth, the 15s will turn on. Where focus is our 12. Yeah,
Well, even the 12, we don't all work with a 12. Most of us, most human beings will work with a 7 because those are the ones that are immediately relevant. Do you know what I'm saying? It's
exactly.
like trying to do what we've just discussed, trying to do light work without doing the shadow work. No, you've got to work with a 7 first. But that's what I'm saying. So it has now been introduced to me that I have to start working with the eighth chakra, which is very exciting for me because I had never even considered it before.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I'm saying? So that is a not so heavy development. I mean, my developments of this kundalini is always so fucking heavy. So I thought I would share a light,
Yeah,
fun-filled development. So I'm going to start working with the eighth chakra. I
nice.
haven't actually started doing it yet. I'm still receiving information about it. I do know or understand that it is by the thymus gland.
Thymus is right here, actually, near the high heart. It's the high heart. So this is thyroid. Thymus is in the heart space around here.
Well, the eighth chakra, don't they call the eighth chakra the high heart?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
technically, so there's 7 in body and there's 5 what's called beyond dimensions. And that's why only when you become a dimensional being can you access these higher dimensions, because then this is where you have ET conversations, because the ETs are beyond time and space, so they make communication through these higher chakras. That's why people who have these higher chakras tend to have ET communications, right? And that's why like the high heart is because your heart or the spirit is now speaking
I
higher.
haven't communicated with aliens just yet, Dr. Charlie.
Just yet, I know, but this is definitely part of the deeper conversation. Is we are always communicating with our what I call cousins, brothers, and sisters up in the stars. I mean, it's very important right now because there's definitely a lot of people making connections. So I do feel like as we're getting our higher chakras activated, we are going to be able to have these deeper relationships with our brothers and sisters who are outside of the planet. But that will be saved for another time. I think after the trine in the air signs, we can go deeper into those. Because yes, Uranus in Gemini, Pluto in Aquarius, I think will bring conversations around ETs and us talking to ET. But for now, they're just in the beginning phases. That's why I don't think people necessarily are hearing and connecting as to ETs as much as the later trines of the air signs. But anyways, so you were saying this seventh, eighth, and this is kind of where you're getting those activated. You're feeling into those right now.
No, I mean, I just wanted to share. No, I mean, it's still very much in the beginning process, so I haven't actually started working with it yet. I'm still, getting information on it's coming, like scattered, where it's located, what it is for, what it is used for. Like, so I'm still in the process of getting more information out of it. I mean, I've never really paid attention to the eighth chakra before. Like, it's never been necessary.
Interesting.
But the point is, I'm very happy that they've introduced it to me, because for me, that is evidence of progression. That's all I care about. It's
Cool.
evidence of
So yeah,
progression.
let's kind of like let's go into sacred medicine and yeah. So let us now go into the sacred medicine space as we share different medicines that will help you through this transits of our time.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should talk about medicines that really fill that hollowness with nourishment. And that nourishment is basically like earth, truth.
Yeah. So definitely for Rent 4 is a very good point for us to kind of ground down and actually replenish our essence in yin. Because you were saying, a lot of this hollow energy that's happening is because we're not able to, what we call the lower dantian is not able to grasp the energy, the chi, and to ground it back into our body. So Rent 4, which is kind of about a little, like halfway through the navel and the pubic symphysis, right? So right under the belly button, there's a point called Ren 4. And conception vessel is also another name for Ren 4. And that's a very good one to anchor during this retrograde, during this like hollow time that we're trying to go deeper. Even a deep pulse is really important to kind of support that deep energy within us.
Yeah, speaking of replenishing yin, I had lung 5 for the same reason, replenishing that yin to really, fill the vessels again. And
Yes.
really to
And it's
counter
also
that dry air.
Yes, and it's good for lungs as we're talking about a lot of air signs and air quality, which will be a good conversation to also talk about now. A breath work that would be really helpful for this is called a box breathing. And so in box breathing, what you're doing is you're actually taking a 4 second inhale, right? Count to four. 1, 2, 3, 4. Take a deep breath in, and then you hold for 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then you release slowly to a count of 8. And that's really going to show you how to slowly breathe out and really control that breath work. And that's really going to slow you down, ground your energy. Because what you're really doing is you're spending more time absorbing the oxygen during that holding breath, and then you're releasing a lot more carbon dioxide. And when you do that, releasing that carbon dioxide is kind of releasing the shadow, releasing the anxiety, releasing all the stress. Because when you do that, then suddenly your body will naturally ground into what is left for you, right? So box breathing is very important during this time for you all.
And it also calms that rapid pulse, because it will bring down, like you said, the
Yes,
grounding. Like earth can,
it pulls all the excess fire down to the ground.
exactly. So it will calm that rapid pulse as well.
Exactly. Yeah, because the rapid pulse is always doing. And usually the rapid pulse comes from, you can see it with shallow breath, because you're trying to take in more oxygen and you have so much carbon dioxide that the carbon dioxide makes your blood boil and very hot. and that's why you're getting that rapid pulse. So make sure to take those deep, slow breath and exhale very slowly to remove all the excess heat in your body.
Well, and I know you and I were talking about stomach 36 earlier on. I wanted to bring it
Yes,
up mostly because that is a point that really helps with self-worth wounds. It helps to That earth point
yes,
helps to
yes.
strengthen the self-worth.
Yes, stomach 36 is such an important point in all of our medicine. It's also the point that helps with the most with the digestion part of our body. And digestion is where, in Chinese medicine, like if you have a strong solar plexus where digestion is, you actually have a strong spirit. And a strong spirit is where you feel confident. So that's why having strong belly, that's why we call it Buddha belly, and why he has a huge belly, he's laughing. He's not fat. He actually has a huge belly full of breath and laughter because he is harnessing his breath and his chi in his what I call his digestion. So stomach 36 is very good to really develop a strong digestion. We actually call it the eternal point. Why? Because actually, if you actually needle stomach 36 every day and put masa there, supposedly they say you start regressing aging because of the way you digest food and the way you anchor yourself, right? So I'm just gonna say there, right there, stomach 36 is a very powerful point for us to kind of pay attention to when we're brown.
Anti-aging. Say no more, Dr. Charlier. Say no more.
Anti, yes, exactly.
What I want to say, no, but the point is, you were talking now also about the essence. So kidney 3, speaking of self-worth, because self-worth is really stored jing, right? So kidney 3 can really help with that as well.
Yeah, kidney 3 is good for the kidney yang, kidney yin. So it's both the kidney fire and kidney water, right? To support both that fire and water together to balance both those energies, the polarity of the energies.
Well, yeah, and so it anchors like frantic fire and air actually through that water, and that in and of itself basically reconnects you to that root essence, which is where it helps with that self-worth. And I think you also mentioned.
Ren 4, yes. Ren 4, exactly. Yeah. So those are the great points and breath work that you all can work with this next couple of weeks as kind of we're moving through kind of this really spicy time of our life with these retrogrades.
Well, and I've got one more
Um,
yoga pose. So the yoga pose I have is a supported fish pose. So it's Matsuyana. And what that basically does is it grounds you through the spine, and it really opens up the chest, which is going to help with the voice and the truth telling. And while grounding into the spine is the earth element. And so it's also a very calming stillness pose. So, calming down the fire and bringing some stillness in. So I like that
yeah.
yoga pose for these times as well.
Yes, yes.
So for foods, um, always grounding foods, stuff like root vegetables, and so forth. But I think in these times, it's important with all this fire and air energy not to just go straight into eating raw, cold foods. Raw, cold, and airy foods. The hollowness is, we see it as deficiency. And those kinds of foods right now will aggravate that deficiency. Um, they're not actually going to fill the air, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah. So I'd say definitely it's a good time for us to be a little bit more nourishing with our food. Cold is never good for digestion. We want warm food, make the digestion not work so hard. Because right now it's so important to actually have clean energy in your digestion so that you're able to handle the shift that's happening. Otherwise, if you add dirty food into your digestion, it's only going to get detox out of it because it's getting ready for you to evolve beyond that density. So please don't get caught up in like eating unhealthy food like fried food and chips and and ice cream. Okay, not good time for those.
Not in eclipse season, y'all. Not in eclipse.
Not eclipse season. Yes, yes, because eclipse season again, we are like in the portal of change. So like, don't bring in all your bad habits in that portal right now. Bring in good habits in this portal so that your body is able to transition and not have so many side effects from this portal.
Well, miso soup or slightly fermented foods will also be good for Virgo gut health.
Ooh, I love miso soup.
Yeah, I also love miso soup, especially in the little bowl.
So one last thing is actually doing called these heaven and earth stretch. And so it's very important that you actually put one hand up, and that one hand up is actually gathering energy from the sky, and then you put one hand down, and you're gathering energy from the earth,
Which hand
because
you
you are
put
the
up and which
conduit of.
hand you put down? Does that matter?
It doesn't matter, because what you're going to do is go back and forth to go from the heaven and earth, and both hands are basically gathering heaven, and then when you're done, you then gather earth on that hand. And what's happening is your hands are creating this conduit of energy that meets in the middle of your heart space, right? In this area where right now we're kind of trying to build up more of this energy, because right now it is kind of this, and this heaven and earth is like the eclipse season where the sun and moon are together, right? So during this time, you want to stretch yourself, to open up to both the masculine and feminine, the sun and the moon, the heaven and the earth, right? To really balance yourself out during this eclipse season, because that will give you the most clarity for you to move forward into the eclipse season and beyond.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for this beautiful medicines. And now we're going to go ahead and close out in our temple space. And so I've got here the solar plexus energy here to kind of really help with a little digestion around here, to really support that light energy, the solar plexus, digestion, the power of will, so we're kind of like cleansing. It's also really good to cleanse the energy with the solar plexus as we're preparing and moving forward into the eclipse season. And Lilith will also give us a beautiful little saying as, we move into the temple space. So, did you have a quote?
So I just wanted to close with breathe it in, speak what was once silenced, and redefine success on your own terms. That's your homework for this episode.
Thank you. So thank you, everyone. Until next time. Bye.
Namaste, y'all.